Okay, so one of the biggest achievements of Marx has been the fact that he was able to identify everything as a relationship. Everything exists as a relation to everything else. Nothing exists in a vacuum. And of course, he's done that for economics primarily, but this is the principle that is true for everything. The dialectical logic applies to everything. I keep saying that. So when you start thinking about everything in relation to the other, because everything has its other, then you can come to better understanding of life, better understanding of everything. So the fact of the matter is, the formal logic shows us the opposites, right? Light, darkness, good, bad, poor, rich. But dialectical logic looks at the becoming, the process. And the process and the becoming are never set in stone. And they're continuously moving, but they're not moving in the way that we humans perceive movement. It is not like, oh, we go from point A to point B. This is the movement. No, it is not like this. And it's not possible, as far as I can gather, to imagine or even observe the movement of the substance. What we can do, however, is we can observe the cause and effect, and we can observe the dialectical pairs. So recently, a comrade has pointed out an interesting dialectical pair that I haven't really been thinking about, even though I've been promoting Kropotkin, despite all of the dogmatic Marxists being aghast. The dialectical pair being cooperation and competition. So I kind of focused on the cooperation part, but of course the capitalist world usually focuses on the competition part. Now, we like to see these two as the opposites, which they are. However, if we look at them from a dialectical standpoint, then we must admit that one does not exist without the other, which doesn't mean, oh, we have to be competitive in order to being cooperative. What we have to understand is the genesis, the development of this pair. One did not appear without the other. One is somewhat of a compensation for the other. Because we were so highly competitive as a species in order to survive, we also needed to develop cooperative skills. We also needed to develop empathy within our species because it ultimately helped us survive as a species. So this is how the dialectical connection, the unity and struggle of the opposites has to be seen. It has to be seen as one process, and it moves, meaning that it overcomes itself and becomes its next form. So nothing ever ceases to be, according to dialectical logic, but what happens is it changes forms. So socialism is a necessary change of capitalism. We don't want socialism. We don't wish for socialism. We just observe the tendencies that capitalism inevitably leads to the creation of its own negation, which is socialism. And this is definitely not to say that socialism is just going to magically arise out of the circumstances and conditions. We don't have to do anything. It's just going to appear. No. The fact that we want better lives, the fact that we want equality, whatever that means, the fact that we want justice, the fact that we are not happy, we're not content with the status quo, with the way things are, this is the ideal that is born by the material. This is not random. This is not because we're spoiled. This is not because we want too much, etc., etc. This is not because we're ungrateful. It is because the substance is going to dictate the way we think about ourselves and our relationships. So this is why all of our discontent, all of our desire for change, it is not born out of just whims and fancy. It is born out of necessity. So socialism through us is going to come to be. We, by organizing together as a working class movement, are going to make it happen, but there is no linear path to it. It is not like, this is the manual, this is what it's going to look like, we're going to act this way or that way. Unfortunately, there is no preconceived plan for us. We have to move with the flow and then against the flow and then with the flow again. But in order to do that, we've got to understand the flow too. So we've got to understand the modern politics of our own countries, places where we happen to be. And we've got to understand the movement of the social matter, so to speak. We've got to understand how the people nowadays relate to each other. And of course, in the capitalist societies all across the world, all the people are going to relate as commodities to each other. They're going to suffer from alienation. They're not going to be able to build meaningful relationships, etc., etc., etc. You've heard me talk about this on multiple occasions, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So, but when we observe in our concrete situations, concrete people with their concrete needs and wants, desires, and all kinds of myths that may surround their existence that they create or they help perpetuate, this is where we can insert ourselves. This is when we can join the people and talk to them and relate to them. And whatever the circumstances are, you may want to start a union. You may want to start an organization of sorts. Maybe it's just going to be a few people at first. Maybe you're going to do something little at first. It doesn't really matter what you start with, but it's the tendency. If you're able to create strong bonds with the people in your community, if you are going to have each other's backs, that's the beginning you want to look for. And then whatever happens, I mean, you will have to decide what is right and what is wrong. Of course, if you study dialectics, this is going to be very, very helpful. If you study the texts of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and a lot of the other thinkers and philosophers I promote, this is going to be helpful. But none of these works are going to provide you with a manual on how to do organizing or how to even move through life. All of these decisions will have to be made based on the current necessity and your current level of awareness, and whatever you happen to do, whatever you decide to do, you'll have to learn to live with the consequences. And all of these things are universal truths. This is why they're so simple. This is why you hear them not only from dialectical philosophy, but you hear them from all kinds of folksy wisdom, etc., because these things are true. They're true. This is why they keep on being repeated. So let me know what you think. Let me know if it all made sense to you. Hopefully you'll have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social medias, even though I don't do much there. And I'll talk to you sometime later.